10. Some up front.
Sure, yeah.
I'm just checking to make sure it's pretty good.
I guess.
They're so bad. They said it would be 2 minutes before it picked up because the crash by the time it went down and then up. Oh, got it now. I forgot my plug-in for my phone today, so I well, I just
Time will come. Yeah.
Rather than, so does that mean you guys aren't going to go out?
It's a class.
Some chairs over there.
Anything for those free donuts with like that.
oh, no, that's fine. I know, I need it right now.
Are you serious? So they want like, I guess since you have the reservations, so it's like, once you hit it up, you'll probably never get it back. I've never told like what I do, I'm kind of happy. That's what I understand.
It's always like it's a nice.
Is it? I've been there like 3 years. I forgot about that one.
All right, good morning, everyone. I think we have the technical glitches out of the way. It's my pleasure to be able to give a special chair presentation. This is a very different presentation than I usually give about scientific topics. So if you have questions during this you'd like me to address at the end, you can email them to Emily Lopic, and she'll read them, and I can answer the questions, or you can answer them live if you like. So the title of my talk this morning is Keep Calm and Carry On, the Importance of Relationships to Your Sanity. In World War II, there was massive bombing of London, and you can see Big Ben in the back there. And despite all of the devastation, the English people kept going. They rallied and they thrived among the rubble. A British government home publicity campaign during World War II designed several posters to try to boost morale. Probably the one that we know best, and I think it's on Donna's iPad, was Keep Calm and Carry On, which really exemplified the British stiff upper lip. Emblematic of this was the King George VI on the right and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, who's actually Queen Mom to the current Queen Elizabeth, who I think boosted morale a lot in London. They went around and they visited the bombed sites and visited with the people of London. While this was certainly an extreme example of persevering among adversity, I'd like to personally reflect today about how relationships like those of the Queen Mom and the people of London can help you through adversity and to better your life and your career. Let's go back a ways. About 33 years ago, I met a very English man named Roger, and he's the one on the left that looks like Mick Jagger, not the old guy on the right. At the time, we were both grad students at Case Western Reserve University in biomedical engineering. And one day, during polymer synthesis class, he came up and said to me something in his droll English accent, "Nice dress, miss." And I think, he won me over almost immediately. And one thing led to the other, and before long, we were married and had 2 PhDs and an MD between us. And, throughout my career and my life, he'd always stood with me and beside me, and we'd supported each other. And there were all these important milestones. First, my older daughter, Ellie, being born, and then the little one, Alexandra, on the right. And through it all, there was Roger. He was the clown and the entertainer at kids' birthday parties. He supported me when I got my PhD and my MD, when I got hired as staff at the Cleveland Clinic, and you can see the arrow there. And there's actually some people you might recognize. Carlos Nunez is second from the right. Tom Bauer with the incredible mustache is the first one on the left. Wilma Bergfeld is on there. I think right behind me is Chuck Biscotti and John Miles. He was also there when we got awarded our first NIH grant. Many of you may not know that we had joined NIH grants together for about 25 years in the field of tissue engineering, and these are some of his biomimetic molecules that he designed to coat cardiovascular implants. He was there when I got elected as the president of the International Society of Laboratory Hematology, when I became section head of hemostasis and thrombosis at the clinic, when I eventually became institute chair, and when this building, the Al building, was dedicated, and then we got named as the Robert Tomsic Pathology and Lab Medicine Institute. So it was really clear that his help and his enthusiasm and his support kept me sane during the evolution of my career. I'd go home every night, because sometimes the institute chair, it's really hard to discuss a lot of things with people, and he was my own personal psychologist. He listened to everything that was on my mind and provided encouragement, recommendations, celebration, and just the right amount of humor, a hearty laugh, and the right amount of British eccentricity. So even when most people didn't know what to say, his support was enough for me to carry on. Like in 2011, shortly after this picture was taken, many of you don't know, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was needless to say, a very, very difficult time. And as chair of the Institute, I really struggled with who do I tell, how much do I say. I'm a strong person and wanted to keep going and making sure that, I could really lead the Institute, and which really made his backing even more important. So he was my rock during 2 surgeries, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and he was really helped me navigate, still helping to run the Institute while going through all of the treatment. And then in 2013, just when everything seemed to be getting back to normal, he got diagnosed with cancer, and he was gone within a year. It left really a huge hole in my life, but left me with a lot of lessons that I want to tell you about today. So it's really been, just over a year since he passed away, and I've had time to reflect how those relationships really help you. How do they help you in your life? How do they help you in your career? And I hope some of the things that I'm going to tell you about now will be relevant to you and your life and your career. So the first one is have someone that you can talk to. It's really, really important to have some type of a support system. I like this cartoon. Nobody ever asks, how's Waldo? It's always, where's Waldo, right? So, I think talking to people is so really important. It can be a husband, a wife, your son, your daughter, a relative, a friend, a neighbor. It doesn't have to be a particular mentor. It doesn't have to be a coach, but it's really important to be able to bounce ideas off of people, say, hey, what should I do with my career? Should I go this way? Should I go that way? Should I take these classes? Should I accept this job? Should I, quit this job? And I think all too often we tend to think we're islands and we can make decisions and we don't really need to bounce ideas off of anybody. So I think one of the things I found, and this was the way because I work really long hours and I'd go home late, dinner time conversation was really, really important. One of the things I found really important was we weren't the sort of family that the kids grabbed a sandwich at 4 and my husband grabbed a sandwich at 6 and then I came home and ate a little bit out of the refrigerator. We all ate together. We'd wait until I got home, and thank God they did. I mean, sometimes I came home really late, but I like cooking. And it would be a time that we could sit down as a family and really have a conversation and talk, how's your day, what's going on? Because otherwise you're like ships passing in the night and you never really talk to each other. And I think at work it's just as important to talk to our colleagues. They talk about best friend at work, and a lot of people laugh about that, but, relating to people, being able to talk to people, is it a mentor that you have? Is it a colleague that can help you with things? I think that's really just as important as, our family relationships. And 2, cherish those relationships, what you have and how you have them. And I think, never take anybody for granted, because really they could be gone tomorrow, whether it's, someone getting sick and passing away, or whether it's somebody that's really important at work that knows like where all the bodies are buried and the next day they're gone. But cherish your relationships. A lot of times you think it's, just about family. And I really encourage you that it's not just about family. It's about, people that you work with at work, working with them, working together with them, and having a good time when you can. And really, I think a lot of times your work family, you see more of the people here sometimes than you see of people at home. This is the time that you're spending a lot of time with people, and you go home and people are busy and they're coming in and out and they're going to bed. And we really have to pay attention to people both at work and at home. Let me give you a couple examples. Well, this was just a cartoon. Maybe you ought to consider making love in the morning before you have a chance to piss each other off. But, some of you have seen flowers in my office. I get flowers delivered the first Monday of every month. And this came out of my brother-in-law, Robert, in England. He used to give his wife Janet flowers every Friday. And whenever we'd go to England, Roger would say, oh, gee, I really wish I'd give you flowers. I said, I wish you would too. And when Robert passed away young at age 52 of melanoma, after Robert died, I got flowers every month from Roger. And I'm still getting flowers. I'm paying for them by myself, but I still get them. I still get them every month because it's really a reminder of that cherished relationship. The other thing was Friday night. In our house, Friday night was sacred. Friday night was family night. And the reason we did that is no matter what deadline you have on Monday, you can usually do something on Friday and kind of catch up over the weekend. So when the kids were little, we would always go out to a movie, we'd go out to dinner. This is Roger with his sister Janet and his niece Samantha. And when, we always, Friday night was a time until the kids got a lot older and it was like, oh, Mom, I don't want to go out with you guys anymore. Then it kind of became Friday night, date night. The other thing, I think, as far as cherishing relationships, was something Roger did with the kids. He always read to them at bedtime. And he got into fairly complicated books. He read all the way through the C.S. Lewis series, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He went through all the way through The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit with them, and he'd play all the voices. He had a great voice to be an Ent. He had all these really kind of fun voices, which I think the kids still cherish those memories. A lot of joint activities are important as far as cherishing relationships. Now, I was never a sports person, but Roger was like passionate about English soccer. And I became a really passionate English soccer fan, and I could name practically all the players in the English Premier League, and I knew which coaches were switching around, and the fact that Wayne Rooney had a hair transplant. And I think, getting to know coworkers outside of work, going to recognition ceremonies, being able to socialize with people, I think is really, really crucially important. I was with a group of the women chairs in different departments, and we had a meeting one morning, and somebody asked the question, where did you come from? What did you do when you were in high school? Where was your family? Where did you grow up? And as we went around the table, I never knew that about anybody about the table. I knew, so-and-so was chair of rheumatology, and so was chair of dermatology. But when you understand where they came from and what makes them tick, that was really interesting. It's also important, I think, at work to celebrate birthdays. I think this was Carl Thiel's birthday with the Grim Reaper, and make new friends. And I think that was so important about the CE conference last Saturday, because you meet new people and people that are from different areas. And I've had fun when I go to Abu Dhabi meeting some of the people there. That's Dr. Layla on the left, who's now at CCAD. Number 3, realize that each person provides something unique. If we all grew up with the same background and had the same education and had the same way of thinking, things really wouldn't, I think, work as well. Roger was athletic. He was a soccer player. He was also a fencer, and that's him with his friend Sam in England, I think. But, I'm maybe a little bit more culinary cooking sort of thing. I like making cheese. And this was me last summer at a cheese-making course in Vermont. And it was actually a fabulous place. They had thousands of wheels of cheese incubating in there. It was really cool. So, I think, when you think at work, how diverse are we? There are a lot of people that are very different. You have some indecisive people. You have some very decisive people. You have arrogant people, people that have a lot of humility. People are messy, and some people are very organized. But I think it takes all of us to make a really good institute and a really good work group. And this was just a photograph from one of the last times I was in Abu Dhabi. And you look at, this is us in the leadership group at CCAD, and there's a lot of diversity in terms of ethnicity and backgrounds and skills. And I think that type of diversity makes a really good group. So the next one is teamwork. Teamwork, everybody talks about teamwork, and obviously sports is really the first thing people think about. But there are a lot of other ways that teams function together. And if you look at the professional staff here, everybody brings different skills to that. I mean, we couldn't function as a professional staff if I didn't have, GI pathologists, GU pathologists, hematopathologists, chemists. It's really the complementary skills and experiences that make everybody more accomplished together than we are alone. Have you ever been in a management seminar where they give you a really difficult problem? I was leading in healthcare, and they gave us this scenario that this plane was crashing in northern Canada, and you had to pick one of 20 things that you needed to get to safety. And you kind of put your list in terms of the priorities of what it would take to get to safety, and I failed. And everybody else kind of got really low scores. But then they put us in groups, and then they gave us the same scenario and asked you to discuss why you would pick different things. And sure enough, when you work together as a group, your score was a lot higher than it is by yourself. So I think that's a really important lesson. I like this cartoon. Barry made the wine, I made the cheese, and obviously it's a cow. Now, teamwork. I remember when our daughters were little, we were both working, we were both full-time, and one of the kids would get sick in the morning, right? Obviously, your first intention is to take them up with Tylenol and send them to daycare anyhow, but that, you can't really do that. So what we would do is we'd split the day. We'd decide who had the busier morning, who had the busier afternoon. One of us would stay home in the morning, and then we'd switch kind of around lunchtime, and that way, at least you get a half a day at work together, and it was really good teamwork. Extending this to the workplace, when Roger got sick, and he had 2 surgeries right in the middle of APRs, and it was a really tough time to say, okay, how do I keep taking care of him? How do I keep working? And Emily really helped me with this in terms of, I looked at all the responsibilities that I had, and teamwork. A lot of people in the Institute stepped up to help me with some of these different tasks to help me, in some of my committee membership. And, it really, I think, allowed me then the ability to be able to both care for him and continue to care for the Institute. So I think teamwork is really amazing, from clinical colleagues who give you ideas about research and share clinical services with you, to leadership teams that I think work effectively together, ones that, a leadership team that can go into a retreat, and I know you guys had some great retreats last week and recently about how we work together as a team more effectively, how we get two different areas to cooperate and collaborate together. And I think the huddles are a really great way that we can collaborate as teams every day to identify what's important today and what can we do to fix it. Next is ask for help when you need it. I think this is an area we all need help on. A lot of times we're afraid to ask for help because we look weak. And, I think it's really important. I like this one, take us to Lady Gaga. It's really important to ask for help when you need it. But, keep calm and fight on. Go back to 2011 when I got diagnosed with breast cancer. It was obviously a really stressful time. I remember I had a mammogram and they said, come back, we see something. And I'd put it off and they finally called and said, are you coming? So I came in and I thought, oh, it's not going to be anything. And within a short period of time, while they were re-imaging me, they said, you need to go right now for an ultrasound biopsy. So they did a bunch of biopsies. It was on a Friday morning. And I remember walking the biopsies over to Carol Farver's office to say, here, process these. And then I had to fly to Dallas to give a talk. Came back Monday morning, got the diagnosis on a Monday morning, and I had to walk in and do the Institute committee meeting 15 minutes later. So, it was all these things are going through your head and you're terrified, but, it was really important that I had Roger around to really help me through that. Now, if there's anything good about going through chemotherapy, and there's not much, it's that the schedule's pretty predictable. You go through cycles and you know when you're going to feel good and when you're not going to feel good. And we were in the middle of building the LL building when I was going through chemo. And I had to plan my whole chemo schedule around the opening for the LL building because I knew I needed to feel well that night. So I had the whole schedule arranged really for that. And, it really helped. One thing that really helped me, there was another doctor that had breast cancer, and she called me. And I had gotten my name and said, can I help you? Do you have any questions? So I think that kind of peer group, that peer mentoring, was really, really helpful. Another story from when I went through this was I was going through chemo and, your hair falls out, which is really, really horrible. But the day that my hair fell out, and first day I had to wear a wig, I had a meeting with Toby in the morning, and talk about being nervous in terms of, how do I look? Is he going to look at me and go and say, what's wrong with you? So it was a little bit stressful. So really, in life there are things that you need to ask for help with. This was a really big example, but having that support and help really helps you get through it. So the last one is have the good times propel you forward. And I think this is really important. I know we all like to have a good time, but sometimes it's those memories of the good times that really help you through some of the difficult times. And and it was really clear that this was last January in 14, the week of the polar vortex. It was clear Roger probably was going to have at most one more vacation. We chose to go to Barbados, and it was actually great being in Barbados when it was really so cold in Cleveland. It was a real struggle to get him there, but we had a great time. We went with his sister and her daughter and my two daughters. And, it was one of those things in my mind. I remember every detail of that week. The fish markets, going swimming, all the dinners that we had, the conversations that we had. And it was really a great time. And I really remember Roger standing there, smiling. He had a great time. So, in your career, there's going to be ups and downs. But it's important to celebrate the good things when you've accomplished them with your team. I think having a good time with your team is important. I guess this is one of the down times when I got arrested with Joanne. But I still had my pearls on. And you know, it's really also important to recognize everybody's accomplishment. It's that interpersonal relationship that makes people feel really good when they're recognized for things, and working together as a team like this and having a good time and moving forward together is really, really important. So at the end, I would say, you know, going back to the keep calm and carry on, you know, those relationships that you have are going to last you a lifetime. I think make good use of those relationships. You know, I still feel Roger's support every day. I had a good time putting this talk together because it was great to see all the pictures and go through all of the memories. You know, and I think the relationships, we often discount relationships at work. Oh, they're just the people that I work with. You think about it, you know, half of your life or more is spent here, and the better that you can have relationships with people at work, the more you're going to get accomplished. So really nurture those bonds both at home and here, and, you know, make sure you can keep calm and carry on and keep going forward. And I'd say, or if you're French, eat cheese and surrender, or keep calm and trust the pathologist. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions. Any questions here, or anything that anybody sent in? Yeah.
Someone would like your tips on how to cultivate relationships at work better.
You know, that's always hard because, you know, we're working side by side but not often talking a lot. You know, and people say, oh, you're talking too much, you're not working. But I would say, you know, I think ideas that, you know, in terms of the time that you have breaks, sometimes it's nice to talk to different people at different breaks. At lunch, go have coffee with someone. Find somebody that you admire. Right? You know, everybody admires somebody that they work with, and sometimes you're afraid to come up and ask them, how do you get done what you do, or how do you do this or that? And somebody asked me that, or I was at a seminar the other week, and somebody says, identify somebody you really admire, go talk to that person and find out, you know, what they do that's, you know, that you admire. And sometimes you'll learn little lessons from people that way, and it'll make them feel good because you're actually talking to them.
Someone else would like to know, how can we feel more of an institute as a whole with so many locations, and how can we cultivate relationships across locations? Yeah, you know, that's something that I find very difficult. You know, for years I've wanted to have, you know, a get-together with the whole institute, but with 1,400 people, it's really very, very difficult. Trying to have events that we blend people together or get people in the same room, like the CE conference this weekend, I think is really good, because that's probably one chance during the year that we have to see people from, you know, different hospitals. Trying to get everybody to work together is certainly a challenge. I think the more that we can, and I think the lab integration that Joe was talking about the last hour has been a really good way for, you know, people like Jane's group, talking to the docs at the regional hospitals, getting to know us getting to know them. You know, and I know many, many years ago when we just started some lab integration processes, at the time Fred DeGrandis was the regional hospital president, and we proposed all of these changes and we kept getting no, 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 no. He said, no one knows you. No one trusts you yet. And I was new in the job, he was new in the job, and I think once we had built that relationship, that he knew we were honest, he knew that we, you know, had the patient's best interest at heart. After a while, he said, yeah, lab is great, you know, you can make these changes. So I think some of it is trust, some of it is track record, but I think it's been very important having these multi-dimensional meetings with all of the different hospitals so that they get to know us, we get to know them, and once they know us and understand what, you know, the process is and what we want to do in the institute, that's been great. How do you put a strong face on when things are bad, or either at home or in your personal life?
You know, I think that's a very difficult thing. My motto has always been take one day at a time. You know, I think it's sometimes you see, all the problems and you worry a lot about things that are going on, but I think you take one day at a time, you look at the challenges that you face that day, and kind of keep things in perspective. I know when things are really bad and there's a lot going on, it's sometimes hard to concentrate at work. If you've got, you're worried about, your daughter or your son or your husband, it's hard to really concentrate at work, and it's hard to really compartmentalize yourself in terms of some of that stress. But then, like when Roger was sick, I had other support system and other people that I could talk to at night to help me with that. And I think actually it helped a lot. I got a caregiver at home to be with Roger during the day, so I didn't think about him falling or having some injury at home. So I think you can, when there's a bad situation some places, maybe another friend or another support that can help you out as well. Any other questions from here? All right, well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming. It's hard to talk about, but once you got your back.
What about you?
How are you?
There was an next one because I just want to ask.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to send it. We had some video issues, and I never and I was accepting the questions for Dr. Farber, and I was like, oh, something happens, I'm not going to be able to, Yeah, so Joe, yeah, it went out okay. I really was going to figure out pretty much a push to do the contract. So it was just on her and the contract. So I tried to. No, you can